It was dinner time at my in-laws' house, and my sister-in-law, who had been away for some time, had finally returned home and joined us at the table that night. The food was set out in front of us, and I observed as my mother-in-law, father-in-law, and sister-in-law picked up their utensils and savored the meal. Then my sister-in-law stopped and fixed her gaze on me. "Aren't you going to eat anything?" she asked. Without hesitation, I replied, "No, I'm the wife. The leftovers will be sufficient for me. Isn't that correct, mother-in-law?" My sister-in-law was taken aback. Her mother seemed more concerned with the food than with what I was saying. Over time, my sister-in-law had come to view her mother with resentment. Let me introduce myself. My name is Kate. I'm a stay-at-home mom who juggles a part-time job, managing the house and raising my child. My husband is frequently away on business trips, leaving me to handle things alone. Of course, I can't complain. We're in love, and he earns enough money to keep the house in good condition. My main concern, however, has always been my mother-in-law, who lives within walking distance. She often calls me over for trivial matters. "The laundry's piled up, so come and wash it for me," she'd say. Or, "In the garden, grass has sprouted. In front of the station, there's a new cake shop." She constantly requests that I run errands for her. It's only natural to need help at times. I could forgive her if she did these things once in a while, but it has become multiple times a day. Honestly, it's been nothing more than a nuisance. I wouldn't mind assisting my mother-in-law if she had a health problem or some other reason that would prevent her from doing these things on her own. However, my mother-in-law is in perfect health, save for her obesity, but she hasn't reported her weight having an effect on her ability to function normally. At my in-laws' house, I am treated as though I am a maid. My father-in-law, unlike his wife, adores me. However, he is completely unaware of the way she treats me. My mother-in-law only calls me when he's out of the house. When I let my husband know about this, he claimed that he would talk to his mother about it. And he has. He's warned her time and time again. But she, on the other hand, would make a fuss about it. She promised that she would help me, but when I asked her to, she changed her mind. She'd say, instead of expressing regret, she would cry and claim that I hated her, painting herself as the real victim. After several times of going through the same thing, I felt awkward bothering my husband with it anymore. I knew that he was so hard at work, and I felt guilty asking him to help me repeatedly. Eventually, I stopped asking him. Perhaps this is what my mother-in-law wanted, but either way, I found myself in a place where I couldn't talk to anyone about what I was going through. I spent my days alone dealing with her. As of late, her demands on me had increased. One morning, I was made to clean up my in-laws' garden. She instructed me to cut branches from the trees in the yard and gather them all up. It was exhausting work, especially as the sun climbed higher into the sky. I was sweating, but I couldn't stop to drink. By the time I was able to take a break, I went inside the house to find that it was past noon. My mother-in-law was laying on a sofa in the living room, completely relaxed, watching TV and eating chocolates. Her t-shirt was covered in wrappers. "I'm hungry. Make something for me from whatever's in the fridge," my mother-in-law ordered me, not taking her eyes off the television. I sighed as I walked into the kitchen and laid eyes on the mountain of dishes that had piled up in the sink. "You'd better get started. My friends are coming over tonight, and I want the whole place to be absolutely spotless." "There's no time to dither," she continued as she devoured more sweets. I asked her to assist me, even just a little, but she didn't care to respond. When she was uncomfortable with what I said, she would pretend as though I was not even there. Soon enough, I cleaned up the dishes and prepared fried rice for the both of us to eat. I set the table for the meal and placed both plates onto it. "Fried rice again? Can't you think of anything else?" she complained, but she began to eat her meal with gusto. I, too, was starving, but I was hoping that my husband had messaged me, so I checked my phone before eating. By the time I had put my phone back down, I was shocked to discover that the plate I had placed in front of me had vanished. My mother-in-law was devouring my meal. She had already finished her own. "That is my food, ma'am," I said aloud. By this point, however, my mother-in-law had already consumed more than half of it. "I'm still hungry. It's your fault that you only cooked a small amount of food. You're just the wife, after all. You'd think that you'd make more, considering you know the wife eats after the rest of the family's finished. But no, you don't even comprehend that," my mother-in-law retorted. quickly devouring the remaining fried rice without waiting for me to respond. There was nothing left. No rice, no vegetables, no meat, nothing at all. Now start cleaning up, my mother-in-law said. My friends will be here soon. With that, she got up and marched back to the sofa, opening a bag of chips with a loud tear, spilling pale yellow crumbs onto the rug beneath her. I vacuumed the floor silently, imagining the vacuum cleaner as my mother-in-law, sucking up every bit of food and every last ounce of my dignity into a cyclone until nothing was left behind. I tried my best to leave my hunger with water as I cleaned up, as I had been asked, but the thought was clear in my mind. I swore to myself that I would never help my mother-in-law again, no matter how much she would beg and plead. If she wanted a maid whom she could command not to eat, she could try and pay for one. As for me, I couldn't do it any longer. I would not return to help her. Or so I thought. Things changed dramatically soon after that day. My father-in-law had passed out of work, and in order for him to recover, he needed nursing care. Unlike his wife, my father-in-law had always been a thoughtful and caring man. I'd assumed that you were going to provide us with a grandson. I was foolish to think that you would give us an heir. Absolutely foolish. When I was pregnant with my first child, my mother-in-law would say these things to me, but my father-in-law would chastise her. He silenced her when she complained about our living situation while we were building our own home. He was always concerned about how I was doing and always offered his skills and advice to us when we needed it. When I learned that my father-in-law had fallen ill, I knew I had to act. I put on my coat, determined to offer the same care in return. But the phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. You wicked wife, when were you going to show up and help me care for my husband? Don't you care at all? How ungrateful. I tried to tell her that I was on my way there, that I was going to go even if she hadn't asked me. I could hear her starting to continue her yelling, but I hung up the phone. I was already worried enough about what my future would look like. If taking care of my father-in-law meant bearing this burden a bit longer, I would do it, I thought. I went to my in-law's house to assist with his care. As expected, my mother-in-law didn't seem to take his care very seriously. After his flare-up at work, my father-in-law had become partially paralyzed on his right side. He maintained some of his autonomy and could use the bathroom on his own, but he required assistance with meals and bathing. Since this meant he needed care throughout the day, I would drop my child off at daycare and go straight to my in-law's house. I made breakfast for my father-in-law, washed sheets and bedclothes as needed, and so on. Then I tidied the house and prepared lunch. It was difficult work, but knowing that it was for my father-in-law made it much easier. Even still, my mother-in-law would not resist. She insisted on criticizing everything that I was doing. She would make a fuss into my ear while I was preparing food for my father-in-law. This is something for sick people to eat. Can't you bother making something more regular? This food isn't for you. I'm making it for Dad, I told her. You're in good health, and you can make your own food. As I said previously, I'm only here for my father-in-law's benefit, and beyond that, I'm here because you will not take care of him. I believe that you're able to take care of yourself at the very least. How rude. Do I need to remind you that I have the right to leave this house whenever I want? I don't care what happens to him. That will all be your problem if I leave. Make me dinner. Her words bore into me, and mine swelled in my chest, but she was right. I couldn't risk forcing her to leave. Every care facility in the area was completely full, even the wait lists were long. As things worked, I couldn't be the sole carer for my father-in-law full-time either. Despite my resentment and desire to rebel against this woman, I had no choice but to submit and make food for her. She devoured it instantly. "Oh, I'm so full," she exclaimed. "Here are your leftovers to eat." My mother-in-law slowly laid down on the low sofa, leaving me to eat. My gaze moved to the pan inside, which held only a few pieces of cabbage and a handful of noodles. Not enough to feed an adult, not enough to feed a child. It was pitiful. But I didn't want to waste the food, so I ate it on a small plate, as though it would make the food appear larger. Of course, it was completely insufficient. I ended up eating a sandwich I had brought from home before I finished folding the laundry and made my way to my father-in-law. I noticed that his face was red, eyes wet with heavy tears. "I'm so sorry," my father-in-law said. He must have overheard what happened in the kitchen. I asked him to be sure, my poor father-in-law. He nodded his head yes, and the shame in his expression was too much to bear. "It's because I've become so ill," he said. That's why she's treating you so poorly. No, no, I softly assured him. Please, you've been very good to me, treated me as though I were your own. I could never see you as a burden now, and you're not to blame for any of this. He nodded again in response, thanking me. I felt sorry for him when I saw him like that. That very night, I received a phone call from my husband's sister. I'd only met her a few times before. My sister-in-law lives with her husband in another state, and she and my mother-in-law don't get along well, so she doesn't visit very often. I'm sorry, Kate, for all the trouble. I should go home to my parents' house right away so that I can be the one taking care of my father, she explained. It had appeared that she had heard about my father-in-law's condition, and that she called me once she discovered I was the one taking care of him. On the other end of the phone, she apologized profusely. I told her that I was merely doing what her father would have done for me and that I hoped she didn't mind. However, my sister-in-law seemed concerned with something else. My mother, she began. You've had quite a rough time there today, haven't you, Kate? My sister-in-law, like my father-in-law, is wise. She likely knows that my relationship with my mother-in-law has been strained since I've been spending more time taking care of him. I really do appreciate her concern, though it makes me wonder. My father-in-law, my sister-in-law, and my husband, they're all such kind people. Why is my mother-in-law so cruel? I couldn't help but become curious. Yes, I'm fine for the time being, though. I let the conversation drift, but my sister-in-law seemed to sense the pain in my voice. After a few moments of silence, she said, I'll be returning home at the end of the year. I'll let my parents know so you don't have to worry about it any longer, Kate. To be honest, I was exhausted. Housework, childcare, part-time work, and caring for my father-in-law every day. It was enough as it was, but also preparing food and cleaning for my mother-in-law, listening to her words full of hate and disappointment. I was feeling trapped. If something hadn't happened soon, I would have broken completely, so my sister-in-law's words were very reassuring to me. Until then, though, my mother-in-law remained the same. No, in fact, she was getting worse. As the end of the year approached, she would tell me to clean the kitchen exhaust fan, wash the screen door, and complete other bothersome tasks. She never took into consideration that I had my own house to tend to as well. It was like my life outside of her didn't exist. I wouldn't have time to prepare dinner for us all on New Year's Eve with my cramped schedule, so I spoke with my husband, and we decided to order it online. What a waste of money, I thought. If you're going to be someone's wife, you want to know how to at least make food. What are you good for? Of course, my mother-in-law was not pleased. You're a wife too. I wanted to scream at her, but I couldn't. I didn't want my father-in-law to overhear us arguing. I didn't want him to think that this was all his fault. I managed to calm her down by promising to prepare the New Year's Eve meal myself. Music. My sister-in-law arrived at the house on New Year's Eve. She was alone. Oh, it's your first time home in years, and still, you have nothing to show for it. You're all alone now. Whatever happened to that pathetic husband of yours? Did he divorce you for taking his place as the man of the house? My mother-in-law hurled insults at her daughter without even saying hello. But when I saw my sister-in-law, I felt that familiar presence. It was as though I was looking at my own reflection as I saw her calmly respond. I couldn't bring my beloved husband here with me. I couldn't bear you being as cruel to him as I knew you would be. Anyways, I came home to see my father, not you. After saying this, my sister-in-law quickly departed into my father-in-law's room. At this rate, the New Year's dinner was not going to go very well. I had made a few dishes, but by dinner time, those dishes were more lively and pleasant than the people present to eat them. The only sound that I could hear in the quiet living room was a pot simmering softly. I served my father-in-law some food. My mother-in-law began to greedily eat the boiled meat on her plate as if on cue. My sister-in-law only looked on coldly. My husband had been attending his company's end-of-the-year party, and he wasn't with us on that night. Had he been there, the atmosphere might have become tolerable or even upbeat. He always brought that to every room he entered. I was wishing for this as I hopelessly assisted my father-in-law the best that I could. Kate, why aren't you eating? My sister-in-law turned to me. I was seated at the table, yes, but only for my father-in-law. There were no plates or utensils available for me. She must have been perplexed. But this had been my life for some time now. I smiled through my pain and told her, Don't worry, I am the wife after all. A wife must be content to have the leftovers once the family's finished. My mother-in-law nodded to my sorrowful words, my stomach aching. Right you are, she said, her words muffled by the food that she was actively eating. She was preoccupied with the meat and was thoroughly uninterested in conversing with us. I was curious how she could act like this and still have no shame. Disgusted by her attitude, I made a sarcastic remark. Though you are a wife as well, why are you eating now? The family's not yet finished. Before my mother-in-law could react, I was surprised to see my sister-in-law stand. Mama will need to eat a lot of meat while she still can. She won't be able to eat such expensive food if she's kicked out of the house. My eyes widened. My sister-in-law presented a document, a single packet of papers that would change everything. They were divorce papers. My father-in-law appeared to be in on all of this as I watched the two of them make eye contact. At last, my mother-in-law's hands came to a halt. Father's divorcing you because he's finally run out of patience. He's been accepted into a very nice care facility and is planning on selling this house as soon as he's moved in, my sister-in-law announced. My mother-in-law nearly spat out her dinner. She hurriedly swallowed her mouthful and looked at her husband and daughter. If you dare do something like that, you'll have hell to pay in alimony. Her face was turning red as she yelled her threat. I'm afraid that's not going to be an issue, though if you insist, we can take you to court over it. We have ample evidence of your disregard for the needs of the family and the neglect of your husband, my sister-in-law replied calmly. My mother-in-law was enraged, but when the word court was mentioned, her attitude swiftly changed. I'm sure she's well aware of her disadvantage if things came to that. I'm sorry for everything, she said, as though she was a different person. She whimpered and kneeled on the spot, begging for forgiveness. My sister and father-in-law, on the other hand, had nothing to say to her pitiful display. She kept apologizing, but there was nothing that she could do. All of us in that room knew that she was in the wrong. You'd better get started signing these papers. Once you're done, you can pack your things and leave the house, my sister-in-law said, relentless in her demand. The years of abuse had welled up within her, and she would not back down on her demands. My mother-in-law would be packed and gone, leaving her alone in the freezing New Year's weather. It seemed that my mother-in-law was also abusing my father-in-law on a daily basis. She betrayed him, telling him that he was worthless and that she wished he would have just passed away instead of becoming such a burden. My father-in-law was very smart. He kept track of her daily outbursts and organized them with the help of my sister-in-law. The data that they had both accumulated was crucial in fighting their case in court. By the end, the claim was settled by offsetting it with a share of property, leaving my mother-in-law homeless. She currently lives in a rundown apartment and is working part-time to get by. She has become a different person in her struggle. She hasn't been able to afford many nice foods and has lost much of her weight, but she is even less healthy now than before. My father-in-law now spends his days living in a luxury nursing home run by a friend of my sister-in-law. They see to it that he is not only healthy every day but happy too. He's made friends with many of the other residents. I pay him visits at least once a week. Progress has been astonishing. Thanks to his rehabilitation, he's regained more movement in the right side of his body. He smiles more frequently, laughs more. It's wonderful. I have made a friend too. My sister-in-law and I have become close and we communicate often. We both want more than anything to keep supporting my father-in-law as best as we can. We will treasure the peace that has finally come to us.